Hello and welcome. This is Matt Forbes of Forbes Words, and I just was in a rant mood, so I jotted some notes down. I want to get into just some random things, some current things, some past things, and maybe the future, if we're lucky. But, I was shaving my head simply because I have a very articulate dome, and also because it took 10 years, but why the fuck is this guy driving his truck? Oh, of course, because he has the right to drive a truck, but of course he has to park it and rev his engine right outside my flat window. As the English, I'm watching a lot of Poirot mysteries, Agatha Christie's character, and they always take place in the 20s or the 30s actually. So, and maybe the 40s, but so I love the lingo. I don't know. I like time period things. It's always fun to see how they dressed, or just the fact that the studios put so much effort into it, and they're just good stories that I have on in the background when I'm working on my writing or editing a video or something. But yeah, okay, Mr. Truck, go on. Luckily this is a comedy rant, so I guess it's apropos. Yes, I'm still a writer, so I have to use big words. Actually, what's surprising is I read a Lovecraft short story, because after putting out my last short story, which was kind of in a tongue-in-cheek terror horror type concept, I was just in the mood to read a Lovecraft story, and it's amazing how short his stories were, how condensed, how much information he was able to convey. And that's something I've always, before I even read his work, that's something I always thought was like the best way to write, was don't we have to do it right though. You can't use this like words that are going to be too big where people lose interest. Somehow he's an ability to use big words, but it's like, even if it's kind of archaic or something, you still get a sense of what he's getting across. And it also makes it fun, because then you can go look it up if you really want to and be like, oh, that's like the detail of that word. But it carries the story so well. It's like, writing is such a strange talent. Someday I hope to be as eloquent as that, but right now it's all about producing the ideas to you, to the listener. That's what's fun. I don't have to worry about trying to produce a book or something. It's just takes so much work. I can just get it out there. It's there. That's what it's for. It comes out of me to go out to the world. I don't. Maybe someday, I'll have the need to go pursue a book career. To me, that's always something. I always want to be an author, but every time I stop and think about it and be like, okay, what are the steps to take to just be an author? It's like, that's all stuff that you do when you're old, to me, like what I would consider old, which is just not, I'm still a performer at heart right now. Like, I'm still in that. I mean, maybe I'm a late bloomer to some aspects of life, but I'm really just entering my prime, or a new prime, you could say. That's how it feels, I think that's what my goal was for my 30s, was to try to hone in on things that were kind of misshapen about me. when I started to become an adult, you know. After you're 18, you start heading into that dimension of being like thinking about being an adult. You know, you're constantly thinking about it in some way, what your adult life is going to be like. You start building it from there, you know, to get out of high school and all that. But yeah, everyone in my family thought that I would have been bald by the time I was, 22 or something, simply because my mother's father was at that age. He had this super bald gene. But also looking back, his mother's father was probably Blackfoot Indian. So I know his mother was Blackfoot Indian. So I didn't realize. I always just wondered why he just seemed so tan all the time. And when he was bald, but he looked like an Indian chief, like. and it's funny when at his funeral, people were like, "Oh my God, Matt, you look like." If you were to compare our high school pictures, me and my grandfather look very similar. So it was, really strange, but that I didn't go bald. But then I feel like in my 20s, when certain stress in my life from a woman and having kids and stuff and trying to kickstart my life, then I noticed like the stress was like just off the charts, and I noticed that it was like I lost like autonomy with my body, and I've spent years regaining that back. That's what I mean about being in my prime. It was like I had a window of time, and then I was like made all these decisions and choices, and then I had to live them out. And I've learned so much from that. I don't really think there's a way to regret learning. You have to learn somehow, and usually it's the hard way, right? But I always thought back, before ever even like having, the thought of losing my hair. Because, at a certain point, I just was like, what, I'm not going to try to fake it. I'm just gonna, I can get away with saying like, oh, I'm a martial artist, so I like, to have even though I don't go to a dojo and practice anymore, so that's what my room is for. But but it's just, I feel closer to human chrome, just like a fixture. Hair adds such a dimension to people. It really is like someone without hair. It's like hard to define that person. They get lumped in with other people that don't have hair. So, I try to be distinctive as a human. I don't want my skull or what grows from it to be, part of my identity. But since I've been young, since I was younger, and when I was 16 or 15 and 16, I started getting into like philosophical, like existentialism and the absurd, things that people usually tackle in college that they don't. I was kind of like ahead of myself in life, but in not always the right ways that would fit, so I just had to deal with it. But that, once I started down that path, maybe I was overthinking at times, but when I went down that path of looking at life just from a different perspective, after you go through a period of deep thinking, right, you're like, all right, yeah, I think that certain things just become silly to you in life, like stuff like hair, that's what I mean is when I was a kid, I used to be in the mirror, and supposedly my father used to do this too, but in his own way, but when he was a kid, but what my grandmother used to tell me. But I just never was happy with how my hair grew and what I could do with it. I didn't appreciate for just having it in general. You know, and I had grown it out a few times and it looked nice, but there was a few times like, you know, smoke too much weed and with your friends, and then you suddenly have you're like, oh, give me a haircut, you know, or do this weird style. I mean, it was cool for the time, but, you know, it's like, I didn't realize that that last time I buzzed my hair or trimmed it a certain way, it was like the last time it would ever be that thick again. So I was like, but, you know, like, you think about those things, it's just so meaningless. It's just something, you know, if anything, I like feeling so streamlined, you know, it's like the last thing I think about, you know, from being that kid that was angry looking in front of the mirror at myself. I was like angry at the universe. I was like, if my first, who knows what weird unconscious blockages are fucking fucked up held there, you know, thinking about stupid stuff like that, you know. It's like, what do you think? Why, you know, you have to be your own best friend. You don't want to be your own worst enemy. You know, they say that when, like in popular stuff, you know, like someone shaving their head is a lot of times like a sign or a symbol of mind control or something. I mean, some like conspiracy people will say that about what happened during COVID, right? Like, there's some people who like were protesting, get like, oh, I'm just gonna shave my head. Like, I don't need to go to the, I don't know. I've heard some weird things that don't make any sense, but I don't really give a shit about it. But I mean, people, yeah, we're like, all our minds are controlled in some way. If you listen to the radio or TV ever, in some way, shape, or form, you're being bombarded with something that is totally unnecessary. But yeah, it's the glue that holds us all together. All the current events, the breaking news, all that shit. It keeps us. It keeps us together. It keeps the narrative of whatever it is we're all thinking about at the same time. Keeps us. It's like they're able to corral us like sheep, as they say, right? But with our minds now. You know, it's like, it's not going on since newspapers, right, and shit. So, but I mean, the deeper you go with that society stuff, you know, a lot of people are finally talking about things as though it's like the first time they're ever talking about it. But people are starting to bring up from all different corners of thought, and even social media stuff and all that crap, about like how like our time doesn't really make sense with calendars. How the 12-month calendar is really bogus, and the way I look into it and like other cultures and stuff from ancient times, and we think of like, the ancients were really, there's like it's like society like half loves to, be like, oh, the ancients were such geniuses, but then at the same time be like, well, they're archaic, and we're, it's like we can't admit that they might have actually lived better lives than we have now, just because we live ahead in time from them. It's like, for some reason, as time advances, every generation wants to believe that they're better than the last one in some way, shape, or form, right? Whether it's people in the last 10 years or 100 years, and we see with all the, the millennials and the Gen X and the Gen Z, Zoomers and boomers and blah, blah, blah. It's like, who gives a shit, like, that stuff to me is really more interesting when you look at it from genetic standpoints. And if you, you can do the same thing when it comes to like Chinese astrology, because they break it up by the animal, and it's like it's a cycle that goes for every, I forget how many total animals there are, but for certain years. So like, for example, 1965 is the same style year. I believe it's the wood snake, I think is what it is also 2025. So it's interesting to look at parallels, like, well, maybe there's some like energetic connection to it. What do they call it, like a monad of time, or like what was, because I look at years, and I think that's the whole concept of the Chinese zodiac. People look at things on the surface and they write it off. They don't go deeper a little bit. You gotta realize it's kind of like looking at it in like a holistic sense, really, because they break it up by the elements, right? And the elements we're entangled with them. We're in nature with them. We use them. We wield them, manufacture them, and those things, like, so I always feel like maybe there's some energetic connection, like, between these years. I don't know. That's where I vibe with it. The more you look into it, the more you start thinking about, like, yourself and your place in the world too. Because then you look at the year you were born and you go, oh, okay, well, like, what other years was that? And then you look at things, and history repeats itself. There's a lot of energies that seem to reoccur. We're kind of just living in this vacuous void of things just re-emerging and changing costume, but it's still the same theater, And so, I mean, they speculate that, based off of turtles' backs and things like that, that there should be 13-month calendar, and that's why the new year starts in April 1st, technically, or it used to when it was a 13-month calendar. And then when the people who pretty much invented and ran all the money systems or whatever, back in the time when they switched over to the 12-month calendar. That was pretty much just like designed for their own purposes. It was to take us out of the natural harmony of following nature, It's like, what are we afraid of? How do we as a collective break away from that? How do we say, you know what? Keep that calendar for your tax stuff or whatever, but we're going to live, and they incepted people's minds so much. When, you go to school and April Fool's Day, when you're a kid, you don't even think about why, now with the internet, they have people sharing, TikToks and stuff, short videos, reels and all that crap about, all these cool little nuggets of information that we have forgotten over time. And I don't know, I find it really, really interesting, and I'd like to someday be a part of a movement that can help do that. Maybe this year, I now that it's approaching April 1st, I've thought about kind of mapping out my own calendar, though I'd love to live it in the sense of being in harmony with other people and being like, yeah, we're all on the same page. But perhaps I need to just kind of live it in my own way and just see what happens. See what kind of mysterious, magical, inspirational things could happen. But I don't know about you, but I've just been trying to stay away from politics and shit like that. I don't have any opinions or ideas. At one point, I just see people around me over the years get, have these intense, heated moments. And I start thinking about it. I'm like, if I look at all this objectively, I don't even want to touch it, I take it in my own private time, and, I like listening to as many different channels of thought and perspectives as possible. And some of the things I listen to, some people are like, well, they would probably lose their minds, but then I'm also listening to what they're listening to, and I'm bouncing, a lot of people I know only listen to a few sources of information of things, so it's like, what is the truth? What is real anymore? I don't know. Everything seems to be like a psyop and something hidden within something else, So all we can do is we're along for the ride, and we'll just see, I'm going to start my calendar and see where that takes me. But, we are who we are, and we are where we are based on our choices in life. And, much like my hair dilemma, I guess I know, it's kind of funny because, they say people, women will choose their mate or whatever you want to call it, deja vu, but they will choose someone, based on certain genetic things that they don't even realize are like programmed inside of them. They think they're just attracted to someone or whatever. And it's interesting to think that especially now with social media stuff, and everyone's so many more people than ever. It's really squeezing them from the inside out. It's like, how much attention do you want to put on the physical world? How much importance does it really hold? Hair, everything. It's funny, the people that will tell me they believe hair is a symbolic sign of power are either people that have a certain affinity for their hair, or they're people who will only say it when it comes to mundane things like that, but they don't talk about the symbolism of other things that they see in the world, or that I point out that they write off. It's convenient. And I guess that's maybe some kind of ego thing. I don't know. I hate that. I don't like hear about that word or whatever. Fucking ego waffle shit. Who gives a... I don't have time for that. Like, learn about it on your own time. But I think we need to reassess what we're talking about these days. People need to change the narrative of just conversation, because things have veered into a really weird place, and I'm sick of it. And that's like, when I'm home, I want to, if I have some time away to be like, I could do some socializing. I go out and I socialize, and I go, what the hell am I doing? I don't, people are just being so torn and pushed and pulled over their beliefs and other people's beliefs. It's like, so, turn the page. What are we distracting ourselves from? We always talk about what are they distracting us from? But really, what are we distracting ourselves from? I don't know if you hear like a lot of noise aside from my voice. It's because the downstairs neighbors of my flat, they recently just had a baby, and so they're always making funny noises and doing the stuff people do when they're entertaining a baby. And I think they're just kind of happy singing type people as it is. I believe they're Brazilian or something, but it's part of their culture, it seems like. They're really nice. They always sound like they're happy. I can hear them through my floorboards. I'm not that type of person to make things loud. If they're, I put a TV on, it's as loud as it needs to be. It's not blaring. Maybe music sometimes, but not like late at night or something. I try to be respectful of other people, but sometimes they're a little more off the rails than I would expect, but they obviously grew up with that as babies, and their babies are going to grow up with it, and the babies. So I don't know about that, but it's funny because they moved in almost a year now, I think, and when they moved in, they had just a younger son. Then she became pregnant. It's funny how a lot of it mirrors my life, what I experienced a little bit completely differently in a sense, but it's cool seeing, a couple get together and, they had a a child, and then they added it, in addition to their family. And it's nice seeing what I wish I could have experienced, but at the same time, what was needed to be done was done, and things, moved on. And I think I've gone through a deep and profound type of understanding, not understanding, but the inner standing, as they would call it, of what it means to lose our ideals in this life. Like I said before, you gotta learn the hard way. There's no shortcuts. All those years in my teens of existential thought and everything, and all the things that I wanted to accomplish, I said, I don't need to be this person. I want to do, what seemed like the best thing at the time. And I had this urge to correct a lot of the ills that I was born into. That idealism was trying to get me to, make a family, do it this way, do it that way. And those souls need to be here on this earth, but our ideal of what that world needs to be isn't always what we think. And I feel like the hardest thing to accept, I must admit, is that in these types of situations in my life, I feel like that's all my 20s was just following my inclinations and my heart. And sometimes there'd be a sort of spiritual backfire. And for a time, it was very much like, this really sucks. I should have made different choices, but I accept the choices I've made now, because I realize that the only way to get the message through, you can read something, but you have to experience it. You have to really learn something. We can say we learn things, but sort of like with the calendar thing and the negative self-talk we give ourselves, having to be in control of that. That's like the hardest thing. But we can't, we can't give up every day we wake up. It's a new chance to start over. It's kind of like probably why they, deem the days of the week ruled under certain like energetic planetary elements, because if you think about it, sort of like I was saying about the Chinese New Year thing, each year isn't just ruled by an animal. That animal is also a part of an element. This is the year of the wood snake, but I was born in the year of the earth snake, and my son is a water snake. He was born in 2013, and my sister is, I think she's a metal snake. She was born in 2001 or whatever. So yeah, it's really fascinating when you look at it all, but don't give up. We can't give up. No matter what you believe it for why you believe it. Be objective. That's the only thing I can say that I'm doing. I won't, I'm not trying to give advice or point anyone in any direction. Screw that teacher trip. When I teach someone someday, it'll be under my terms. There's too much of that guru, let me teach you stuff, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just too altruistic. But I guess I went from idealistic to altruistic, right? Well, I hope you enjoyed this rant. Hope you've been enjoying The Damn Saint. I hope you've been enjoying the short stories. There's always more to come. Thanks for listening to my comedy rant. This is Matt Forbes of Forbes Words, and this is me just shedding a little light on the subject.